She found a wallet with $4,000 inside. She could have kept it. She should have kept it. But what happened next changed everything. Welcome to Voice of Granny. While you are here, please hit the subscribe button and comment where you are watching from. Thank you. Hi everyone. I want to share a story with you tonight, a story that changed someone's life completely. It's a story about finding something precious, not just in your hands, but in your heart. So please sit back, get comfortable, and let me tell you about Sarah. Sarah was just like many of you watching right now. She was 22 years old, working hard to make her dreams come true. Every single day, she was grinding, doing her best to build a better future for herself. She was a nursing student, and that was her passion, the thing that kept her going even when everything felt impossible. You see, Sarah had big dreams. She wanted to become a nurse, wanted to help people, wanted to save lives. But there was one big problem: money. Sarah didn't have much of it. Not at all, really. She was struggling just to get by, like so many people are. So what did Sarah do? She worked. She worked at a place called Murphy's Cafe, a small diner in the heart of the city. It wasn't fancy or anything. It was just a regular place where regular people came to eat. There was the smell of coffee always hanging in the air, grease sizzling on the griddle, and the sound of plates clinking in the kitchen. But Sarah loved that place because it was honest work, and it was helping her reach her goal. Every night, Sarah would put on her uniform, a simple white apron over her clothes, and she would work her shift. She'd take orders, serve food, clear tables, and smile at customers even when her feet were aching and her heart felt heavy from exhaustion. She carried trays loaded with pancakes dripping in syrup, burgers stacked high with fries, and cups of hot coffee that steamed up the diner. The tips weren't much, but they added up. Every dollar mattered. Every single one. After her shift ended at the diner, Sarah wouldn't go home to rest. No, she would pull out her textbooks and study. She'd sit in her small apartment, or sometimes in the university library late at night, studying human anatomy, memorizing the names of bones and organs, understanding how the body worked. Her dream of becoming a nurse was worth the sacrifice of sleep, worth the aching in her body, worth all the struggle. Sarah was naturally beautiful in a way that made people feel comfortable around her. She had this warm energy, this kindness that just radiated from her. When she smiled, it was genuine. When she laughed, people felt better. Even though she was working hard and stressed, she never let that show to the customers. She was always kind, always professional, always present. Now, let me tell you about the night that changed everything. It was 1:45 in the morning on a cold, quiet Thursday night. The diner was winding down. The last customers were finishing their meals, and soon Murphy's Cafe would close for the night. Sarah was wiping down the counter, her mind already thinking about the anatomy test she had to study for that morning. Her feet were throbbing, that dull, familiar pain that came from standing all day and all night. She looked toward the back booth, booth number 7. There was one customer still sitting there. He had been there for about 30 minutes, just sitting quietly, nursing a club soda. He was a striking man, if you can describe someone that way. He was dressed in an expensive dark suit, the kind that looked like it cost more than Sarah made in a month. His features were sharp and angular, his hair dark and perfectly styled, and his eyes seemed to see everything. They were cold, calculating, but also incredibly alert. He didn't smile. He didn't seem to be enjoying the cafe at all. He just sat there, watching, observing. There was something about this man that made Sarah feel nervous. It wasn't that he was threatening or rude. It was just that he didn't fit into the world of Murphy's Cafe. He was like a piece from a different puzzle, a different life entirely. His presence made the casual, warm feeling of the diner feel heavy and serious. When he finally finished his drink, he left a $100 bill on the table. Just like that. No tip calculation, no consideration. He simply stood up, placed the pristine bill on the table, and walked out without saying a single word. The door chimed as he left, and then he was gone. Sarah cleaned up after he left, clearing the booth where he had been sitting. She wiped the table down, clearing the glass that had held his club soda. And then, as she was wiping the cracked red vinyl seat, her hand brushed against something solid. Something that didn't belong there. Her fingers found a wallet tucked deep between the seat cushion and the back of the booth. Sarah's heart did a little jump. She pulled it out slowly, carefully. It wasn't just any wallet. It was beautiful. It was made of rich, glossy leather the color of deep burgundy, almost black. When you held it in your hand, you could feel the quality. It was heavy, substantial, the kind of thing that was made to last a lifetime. It was completely different from everything else in that diner. It was out of place, just like the man who had left it. Sarah stood there for a moment, holding the wallet, feeling the weight of it. She knew she should open it. She knew that inside would be information about who it belonged to. But as she stood there, she could feel something else too. She could feel that this wallet belonged to someone important. Someone powerful. Someone who moved in a world very different from hers. She took a breath and opened the wallet carefully. Inside, Sarah's eyes widened. There wasn't the usual clutter of a normal person's life. No grocery receipts, no photos of family members, no credit card collection. Instead, there were 2 thick bundles of cash. Crisp, new $100 bills. She could only estimate, but it looked like thousands of dollars. Thousands and thousands. And there was an ID card. The picture showed the man from the booth. His name was written on the card, Marcus Sterling. The address listed was somewhere in the exclusive part of the city, the place where the wealthy lived in gated communities behind high walls and security cameras. There was also a single card made of heavy metal, with an engraved symbol that Sarah didn't recognize. No bank name, no company affiliation. Just that symbol. Sarah's hands were shaking. She did the math in her head. The money in this wallet. It had to be at least $4,000. Maybe more. $4,000 was tuition for her next 2 semesters. It was textbooks. It was her rent for several months. It was freedom from the endless cycle of diner shifts and late-night studying. It was the answer to every financial worry that had kept her awake at night. Sarah stood there in that empty diner at almost 2 in the morning, holding a stranger's wallet, with the kind of money in her hands that could change her life. She could take it. No one would know. The man probably wouldn't even care. Someone with that much money probably wouldn't even miss it. Sarah could use it. She needed it. She deserved it. But then she heard a voice in her head. It was the voice of her grandmother, the woman who had raised her, the woman who had taught her everything about being a good person. "Baby," her grandmother's voice said, as clear as if she was standing right there in the diner. "There is no peace in stolen comfort. You sleep soundly on your own dime." Sarah closed her eyes. She thought about her grandmother. She thought about all the times her grandmother had struggled, but had never compromised her values. She thought about what her grandmother would say if she knew Sarah had taken this money. Sarah made a decision. She was going to return it. But how? She couldn't just leave it at the diner for anyone to find. She couldn't trust her manager with it. He wasn't a bad person, but she knew he would find a way to make the money disappear. She couldn't mail it. That seemed ridiculous for something so valuable and important. She looked more carefully through the wallet. Inside the card slot, tucked away, she found a simple business card. It had no logo, no company name, nothing fancy. Just a name, Marcus Sterling, and a 10-digit phone number. Sarah took a deep breath. Her heart was racing, but she knew what she had to do. She walked behind the counter to the old diner phone, the greasy, worn phone that had been there for probably 20 years. She picked up the receiver. Her palm was sweating as she dialed the number. It was 2:15 in the morning. The phone was answered on the first ring. Yes, a man's voice answered. It wasn't Marcus Sterling. It was someone else, someone whose voice was rough and immediately demanding, asking for information without any of the usual politeness or greeting. "Hi," Sarah said, trying to sound professional and confident, even though she was terrified. "My name is Sarah Mitchell. I'm a waitress at Murphy's Cafe here in the city. I believe one of your associates left his wallet here tonight. His name is Marcus Sterling." There was silence on the other end. It was a heavy silence, the kind of silence that felt like it lasted forever. Sarah could imagine the person on the other end of the line investigating her, checking her background, running her through some kind of database, all based on just her voice and the name of the diner. "Hold," the voice said. Just that one word. Cold. Clipped. Sarah waited, her heart pounding in her chest. Then another voice came on the line. This voice was different. It was deep and smooth, and had an accent that Sarah couldn't quite place. It was the voice of someone used to being in charge, used to people listening to every word he said. It was Marcus Sterling. "You have my wallet," he said. Not a question. A statement. "Yes, sir," Sarah said. "You left it in booth 7. I found it after you left. I wanted to call you so I could return it safely." "You could have kept it," Marcus said, his voice completely emotionless. "It contains significant money. You work in a diner. I am aware of your financial situation. I am aware that you are struggling." His words stung a little bit. the casual way he dismissed her life, her struggles, her situation. But Sarah kept her voice steady. "It's your property, sir. My situation doesn't change the fact that the right thing to do is return it. I can wait here for you to come get it, or I can keep it safe until morning. Whatever works for you." "You will secure nothing," Marcus said, his voice suddenly sharp and commanding. "You will remain exactly where you are. The wallet will not leave your sight. Do you understand?" "Yes, sir." "I understand," Sarah replied. "A car will arrive in exactly 15 minutes. You will hand the wallet to the driver directly. You will not attempt to have a conversation with him beyond necessary confirmation." "And Sarah," he said, his voice lowering to something that sounded almost threatening, "you did not open that wallet. You did not look at the money or the contents. You did not open it at all. Do you confirm this?" Sarah knew he was testing her. She knew he was trying to catch her in a lie. And she froze for a moment. Because she had opened it. She had looked inside. She had seen the money, the cards, everything. But something told her that telling him the truth would only cause problems. Something told her that honesty might put her in a difficult position. So Sarah made a choice. She lied. "That's correct, sir. I did not open it. I found it and immediately called you. It has remained closed the entire time." "Good," Marcus said. "Your honesty will be evaluated. Wait for the car. Do not leave the diner." The line went dead. Sarah hung up the phone slowly. Her hands were shaking. She had just lied to a powerful, wealthy man who clearly operated in a world she didn't understand. A man who seemed to know everything about her already. A man who had just evaluated whether she was honest or not, and she had given him the wrong answer. She locked the register and locked the front door. Then she sat down on a stool and waited. The street lights outside cast long, strange shadows across the red and white checkered floor of the diner. Sarah knew she had done the right thing by calling him and offering to return the wallet. But she also knew something else. She knew that by choosing to do the right thing, she had stepped into a world she didn't understand. A world that belonged to a man named Marcus Sterling. And she had a feeling that her life would never be quite the same again. The 15 minutes felt like hours. Sarah sat on that stool in Murphy's cafe, watching the clock tick by. 15 minutes. That's what he had said. A car would arrive in exactly 15 minutes. She clutched the wallet in her lap, feeling its weight. It wasn't just the physical weight she felt, but the weight of what it represented. This wallet belonged to someone powerful. Someone important. Someone whose world was very, very different from hers. The minutes dragged on. Sarah kept her eyes glued to the street outside the large diner window. She was looking for a car, though she had no idea what kind of car to expect. Would it be fancy? Expensive? Would it be obvious that a person of importance was coming to pick up a lost wallet from a small diner in the middle of the night? The fear she felt was real. It sat heavy in her chest. But it wasn't fear of being robbed or hurt. It was fear of the man she was about to meet. Fear of what she might have gotten herself into. Fear of having lied to him about opening the wallet. Because she had a sinking feeling that he would eventually find out the truth. And she wasn't sure what would happen then. At exactly 2:30 in the morning, a car pulled up outside the diner. It was massive. It was a huge black SUV, the kind of car that made a statement just by existing. It had tinted windows so dark you couldn't see inside. It was sleek and powerful and intimidating. The kind of car that didn't belong on the streets near Murphy's cafe. It idled silently at the curb, looking like it could absorb all the light from the street lights around it. This wasn't just transportation. This was a statement of power. The passenger door opened. A man stepped out. He was tall, really tall, and built solidly. He was wearing a simple black turtleneck and a long leather coat that shimmered slightly under the street lights. But his presence was immediately intimidating. He moved with a kind of controlled grace, the grace of someone trained to be aware of everything around him. His eyes were sharp and dark, and they scanned the street and the diner with the practiced efficiency of someone who was used to assessing situations quickly. He pushed open the diner door. The little bell chimed, sounding too loud in the quiet night. "Sarah Mitchell," he said. His voice was flat, emotionless, like a machine delivering information. Like he was confirming a name on a list. "Yes," Sarah said, standing up quickly from the stool. She slid the burgundy wallet across the counter toward him. Her hands were shaking slightly. "Here it is. Safe and sound." The man didn't reach for it immediately. Instead, he looked at her. Really looked at her. His eyes moved from her tired face to her worn but clean uniform, to the way she was standing, to the expression on her face. It was like he was searching for something, some sign that she was lying or hiding something. It was intense and uncomfortable, and Sarah had to force herself not to look away. Finally, he reached out his large gloved hand and picked up the wallet. He didn't open it. He just held it for a moment, feeling its weight, tapping the leather surface twice as if confirming that everything was still inside, that nothing had been disturbed. The gesture suggested that he knew exactly what this wallet should feel like and could tell if anything had been tampered with. He slipped the wallet into the inside pocket of his coat. "Mr. Sterling appreciates your promptness," he said, still looking at her. Then he reached into another pocket and placed a thick manila envelope on the counter where the wallet had been. "His gratitude," the man said simply. Sarah's heart jumped. She reached out and pushed the envelope back across the counter. "I don't need payment," she said quickly. "I did what I thought was right. That's all." "The directive is not negotiable," the man said, his voice hardening slightly, gaining an edge of real authority. "The exchange completes the transaction. It is how things are done." He didn't wait for her response. He gave her a small, formal nod of his head, not warm, not connected to anything emotional, just a formal gesture. Then he turned and walked out of the diner. His footsteps were measured and deliberate. The door chimed again as he left. Less than a minute later, the black SUV pulled silently away into the night, disappearing into the darkness. Sarah stood there, staring at the envelope on the counter. Her heart was still racing. She reached out slowly and picked it up. It was surprisingly heavy. Not heavy with papers, but heavy with money. That she could tell immediately. With shaking hands, she opened it. Inside was a stack of cash. Fresh bills. $50 bills and $100 bills, all in sequential order. She counted quickly. $5,000. $5,000. More than she could make working at the diner for 3 months. The amount was absolutely staggering. But there was also a note. It was written on expensive cream-colored cardstock, in handwriting that was smooth and confident, and clearly belonged to someone educated and powerful. The same paper, Sarah noticed, that the business card had been printed on. The note said, "Sarah, an interesting choice. You prioritize principle over profit in a world that rarely rewards it. Your name is now associated with a trait I require: integrity. Do not spend these funds immediately. Do not mention this to anyone. You have passed the preliminary vetting. Wait for contact. Marcus Sterling." Sarah sank back onto the stool. The note fell from her fingers onto the counter. And then, all of the fear she had been holding back came rushing out. The fear mixed with a terrible understanding. She hadn't just found a lost wallet. She had been tested. She hadn't just returned property to its owner. She had been observed. She had been evaluated. She had been catalogued by a man she didn't know. A man who seemed to operate in a world completely separate from the normal world that Sarah lived in. This wasn't a simple good deed with a simple reward. This was something much bigger and much darker than that. Marcus Sterling wasn't just a wealthy businessman. The way he operated, the way he had tested her, the way his security team had moved, it was all too calculated, too organized, too deliberate. He was someone used to power, someone used to controlling situations, someone used to people obeying him. Sarah took the money and the note home with her that night. She felt watched, even as she rode the early morning bus to her apartment. She felt like invisible eyes were following her. And maybe they were. She locked the $5,000 in a metal box and hid it in a false bottom of an old jewelry case. She couldn't bring herself to spend it. The money felt wrong. It felt like a leash. It felt like an invisible connection to a man who was interested in her for reasons she didn't understand. For the next 2 weeks, Sarah lived in a state of constant anxiety. She couldn't sleep well. Every sound made her jump. She started taking different routes home, changing up her schedule, looking over her shoulder constantly. She told no one about any of this. Not her friends, not her family, not even her closest friends at the university. She kept the secret locked away deep inside her, along with the $5,000 in the metal box. She threw herself into her studies with even more intensity than before. She pored over her textbooks, memorized facts about the human body, studied late into the night. She told herself that if she could just bury herself in work and studying, then the anxiety about Marcus Sterling would go away. Then she could pretend that the whole thing was just a strange dream. She started working out every night, running on the treadmill, doing push-ups in her small apartment, anything to burn off the nervous energy that hummed beneath her skin. She was tired all the time. She was anxious all the time, but she tried to keep it together on the outside. She went to classes. She studied. She tried to live her normal life. The dedicated flip phone that came with the $5,000 sat on her nightstand like a bomb waiting to go off. Marcus Sterling had sent it to her through a delivery service. There was no note with it, just the phone in a plain box. She never turned it off. She checked its battery life obsessively. She never gave the number to anyone. She never used it to contact anyone. It was just there waiting for him to call. Days turned into weeks. The fear began to fade slightly, transforming into something more like a constant background anxiety, a shadow that Sarah learned to live with. Maybe, she thought to herself with a desperate kind of hope, he had forgotten about her. Maybe she was just one of hundreds of people he had tested over the years. Maybe he had moved on to other things, other people, other tests. The flip phone never rang. 5 months passed. Sarah moved deeper into her studies. She was doing well in her classes. She was gaining confidence as a pre-nursing student. She was beginning to feel like maybe, just maybe, she could make it. Maybe she could become a nurse. Maybe she could build the life she had always dreamed about. She was beginning to believe that the whole Marcus Sterling situation was behind her. But then, on a cold night in early winter, Sarah was studying late at the university library. It was about 11 p.m. The library was mostly empty except for a few other dedicated students scattered among the stacks. It was quiet. It was peaceful. Sarah was deep in a textbook about human physiology, tracing through the Krebs cycle with her finger, committing the information to memory. She didn't hear him approach. She felt, rather than heard, a change in the air. A sudden chill. A sense of attention focusing on her. She looked up from her textbook, and her breath caught in her throat. Marcus Sterling was standing about 10 feet away from her, near the reference section. He was standing beneath one of the harsh fluorescent lights that made his features look even more angular and severe. He wasn't wearing a suit this time. He was wearing a thick, perfectly fitted navy wool coat and dark slacks, making him look less like a dangerous enforcer and more like an extremely wealthy, extremely intense scholar. But even dressed casually, his presence was unmistakably powerful. He carried himself like someone used to being in charge, used to people listening to what he said, used to the world conforming to his will. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't waving. He was just standing there, maintaining a steady, unwavering gaze until Sarah realized he was looking at her. He had come to find her. He had been waiting for her. Sarah's heart began to pound. She quickly started gathering her textbooks, shoving them somewhat messily into her backpack. She stood up and walked toward him, slipping past the long aisles of mostly empty study carrels. "Mr. Sterling," she whispered, her voice tight with fear and confusion and so many other emotions she couldn't name. "What are you doing here? How did you find me?" He didn't answer her questions. Instead, he gestured with a subtle inclination of his head toward a secluded corner of the library, the section reserved for rare documents and valuable books. A section that was almost always empty. "I am confirming my assessment," he said quietly, his voice somehow carrying perfectly to her ears despite how quiet he was speaking. "I am confirming that you have kept my secret. You have told no one. You have not spent the money." Sarah felt her chest tighten. He had been watching her. He had somehow kept track of what she was doing over these 5 months. He knew where she lived, where she studied, how she spent her time. The realization was both comforting and terrifying. She nodded wordlessly and followed him to the secluded corner of the library. They sat down at a low, empty table. Marcus Sterling didn't sit. He stood, forcing Sarah to remain standing before him, making her feel small and exposed. It was a power move, and Sarah recognized it as such. "That night," he began, his low voice cutting through the quiet of the library, "the wallet you returned contained far more than money. It contained operational codes and highly sensitive information. Dropping it was a calculated risk on my part. A field test, if you will. I needed to know who in that area could be trusted, who would act on principle rather than greed. You were the only one who passed this test, Sarah. Not with greed. With integrity." He reached into his inner coat pocket slowly and deliberately. Sarah's breath caught, wondering what he was going to pull out. He withdrew a small flip phone, similar to the one already on her nightstand at home. But this one looked even more sophisticated, more encrypted, more protected. He slid it across the table toward her. "I need eyes and hands in places that my conventional methods cannot reach," he said quietly. "I need someone who exists outside of the structure I control. I need someone clean. Someone like you." I have investigated your background thoroughly. You are brilliant. You are driven. And you are poor. He said the last word without judgment, simply as a statement of fact. Your dream is to become a nurse. Correct. Sarah nodded, though no question had really been asked. I will pay for everything, Marcus continued. Your medical degree, your residency, your living expenses. You will graduate as a registered nurse with absolutely no debt. Complete financial security. A fresh start. A real beginning. Sarah stared at the phone on the table between them. Her mind was racing. This was her dream. This was everything she had been working toward. This was the solution to every financial problem she had ever faced. This was freedom. This was possibility. This was hope. But it came with a price. She could feel it. Nothing this good came without a price. What is the cost? She asked, her voice steady even though she was terrified. She had to know. She had to understand what she would be giving up if she accepted this offer. His eyes narrowed slightly, and she saw a spark of something in them. Approval, maybe. Respect, possibly. She hadn't fallen apart or begged. She had asked the right question. The cost is simple, he said. Unwavering loyalty. Absolute silence. And your skills as a medical professional. He leaned in slightly, his imposing figure filling her vision, his expensive cologne, something woodsy and sharp, suddenly overwhelming her senses. Certain associates of mine, powerful people who cannot risk public attention or hospital records, occasionally require discreet medical attention. You will go where I direct you. You will treat injuries or illnesses. You will stabilize patients. And you will say nothing. You will tell no one what you see, who you treat, or where you go. Ever. Your professionalism must be absolute. Your curiosity must be non-existent. He leaned back slightly, his voice lowering to something almost threatening. If you refuse, you remain a waitress. You struggle. You work your way through school as you have been doing. It will be difficult, but you will be safe. Your life will remain your own. He paused, letting the weight of those words settle on her. If you accept, he continued, tapping the phone on the table, you walk free into your future. You are fully funded. Your dreams become reality. But you become mine. You are my responsibility, and I am your responsibility. And if you ever speak a word of what you see or do, if you ever attempt to use this knowledge for your own gain or to hurt me or my associates, I will ensure that your safety and your future are permanently revoked. Do you understand what I am saying? Sarah understood. She understood completely. This was a test of a different kind. This was a test of her ambition against her fear. This was a moral negotiation with a man who had power beyond what she could fully comprehend. This man was asking her to step into a world she didn't understand, to become part of something she couldn't fully see or explain. Choose now, Sarah, he said. I need your answer. Sarah looked at the phone on the table. She looked into the unflinching eyes of the man standing before her. She thought about her years of struggling. She thought about the exhaustion of working nights and studying days. She thought about the possibility of becoming a nurse without debt, without years of financial burden hanging over her head. She thought about her grandmother, and what her grandmother would say about a bargain made with a man like this. But then she thought about how hard she had worked, how much she had sacrificed, how close she was to achieving her dream, but also how far away it still felt because of money. Money that she didn't have. Sarah reached out and picked up the phone. It was cold in her hand. It felt heavy, weighted with significance. She was making a choice that would change everything. I accept, she said, her voice clear and strong despite the terror tightening her chest. I accept, Mr. Sterling. A ghost of a smile, cold and satisfied, touched his lips. The initial funds are already in a secure account, he said. You will begin your enrollment process immediately. Give your notice at the diner. Call me Hyung Nam, Sarah. We are partners now. Equals in a business arrangement. The way he said her name, the chilling intimacy of it, sent a chill down her spine. It was a new kind of connection, a new kind of fear, a new kind of bond. The powerful man before her wasn't just an employer. He was her patron. He was her silent owner. He held the keys to her future. He turned, his dark coat swirling slightly as he moved, and walked out of the library as silently and mysteriously as he had arrived, leaving Sarah standing alone with a phone in her hand and a future that had just been completely rewritten. The next morning, Sarah walked into Murphy's Cafe and found her manager, Lenny, in his small office in the back. She was nervous, but also somehow more confident than she had ever been. She knocked on his office door. Lenny looked up from his desk, where he was doing the restaurant's books. He had owned Murphy's for 15 years, and he was a fair man, but not particularly warm or sentimental. Business was business to him. "I need to give you my 2 weeks' notice," Sarah said simply. "I'm leaving." Lenny's eyebrows shot up. He put down his pen. "You're leaving? Sarah, you've been working here for 4 years. You're one of my best employees. What's going on? Did you get a job somewhere else?" "No," Sarah said. "I got a scholarship. A large, private scholarship. It's going to cover my nursing degree completely. I won't need to work anymore. I need to focus on my studies full-time." Lenny leaned back in his chair, studying her. "A scholarship? Sarah, that's incredible. But I have to admit, I'm surprised. A few months ago you were barely scraping by. Now you're getting a full ride." Sarah could see the suspicion in his eyes. She understood. It must have seemed like something didn't quite add up. But she had prepared for this. "It's a private foundation," she said, keeping her story vague but believable. "They have specific criteria, and apparently I met them. I'm very grateful. It's a life-changing opportunity." Lenny studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Well, I'm happy for you, kid. I really am. You're going to make a great nurse. I've always thought so. Let me know if you need anything during these next 2 weeks." That was it. Her life at Murphy's Cafe was ending. Sarah took Lenny's 2 weeks and made sure everything ran smoothly. She trained the other servers on her routines. She left detailed notes for him about regular customers' preferences. She was professional and kind right up until her last shift. And on her final night, as she was taking off her apron for the last time, she felt a profound sense of liberation. A weight was lifting from her shoulders. That weight was immediately replaced by a different kind of weight. The weight of her new arrangement with Marcus Sterling. The weight of the secret she had to keep. The weight of the responsibility she had taken on. Sarah used the secure account Marcus had set up to pay for her tuition in full for the next 2 semesters. She bought a complete set of high-quality textbooks, medical textbooks, anatomy books, pharmacology guides, all the materials she would need to become an excellent nurse. She moved out of her shared, rundown apartment and into a small, quiet, well-maintained place closer to the university campus. It wasn't fancy, but it was clean and peaceful and all her own. She could spread out her books and study without being disturbed. She had a good desk. She had a comfortable bed. She had a life that finally felt manageable. For the first time since she could remember, Sarah wasn't stressed about money. She wasn't staying awake at night worrying about how she would pay her tuition or her rent or buy her textbooks. She could focus on her studies. She could focus on her dream of becoming a nurse. She could focus on learning the skills she would need to save lives. She poured herself into her pre-nursing courses with everything she had. She attended every class. She took detailed notes. She studied late into the night. She worked with her study groups. She asked questions in class. She visited her professors during office hours to discuss concepts she didn't fully understand. She was determined to be the best nursing student she could possibly be. Every night she would work out. She would go for runs or do yoga or lift weights in the small home gym she set up in her apartment. She was burning off anxiety, burning off the nervous energy that still hummed beneath her skin. Because even though her financial situation had improved dramatically, even though her future as a nurse looked bright and achievable, she was still waiting. She was waiting for Marcus Sterling to call. The dedicated flip phone sat on her nightstand, always on, always charged, always ready. She never used it to contact anyone. She never gave the number to anyone. She checked its battery level obsessively. Every time it made a sound, a beep, a vibration, anything, her heart would jump into her throat, thinking it might be him. But it never rang. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. 5 months passed. Sarah moved deeper and deeper into her studies. She was excelling in her classes. She was gaining confidence. She was becoming the nurse she had always dreamed of being. The anxiety that had been so intense in those early weeks after finding the wallet began to fade into a constant background hum, a shadow she had learned to live with. Maybe, she thought to herself with a desperate kind of hope, Marcus had found what he needed in someone else. Maybe she was just one piece of a much larger puzzle. Maybe he had moved on. She tried to let go of the fear. She tried to believe that she could just accept his generosity and his help without having to pay a price. She told herself that maybe things worked differently in the wealthy world. Maybe powerful people just help people sometimes, with no expectations, no hidden agendas. But deep down, she knew better. Then, on a night in early winter, everything changed again. Sarah was pulling an all-nighter, preparing for her first round of major final exams. These weren't just any tests. These were the exams that would determine whether she could continue on the path to becoming a nurse. These were high-stakes, important tests. She was sitting in the quiet section of the university library, surrounded by her textbooks, her notes, her study guides. She was completely focused, completely absorbed in memorizing the names and functions of every bone in the human body. It was 3:45 in the morning. The library was essentially empty. Sarah was the only person there, surrounded by fluorescent lights and the hum of the air conditioning system. The flip phone rang. The ringtone was sharp and grating, completely different from any normal phone. It was designed to be impossible to ignore. Sarah's eyes snapped open. Her heart immediately began to race. The fear was instantaneous and absolute. She had been expecting this call for 5 months, but now that it was actually happening, she felt completely unprepared. She reached over and grabbed the phone from her bag with shaking hands. "Hello," she answered, her voice barely above a whisper. "Hello, Sarah." Marcus Sterling's voice came through the phone. It was different this time. It was tight, strained, urgent, and filled with a kind of desperate energy she had never heard in his voice before. This wasn't the calm, commanding man she had spoken to before. This was a man in crisis. "Car will be there in 8 minutes, he said rapidly. "Put on your scrubs. Your medical scrubs, Sarah. The ones I purchased for you. No conversation with the driver. Bring nothing but your phone. The patient is critical. I need you to focus completely. Do not fail me. Where are we going?" Sarah asked, already scrambling out of her chair and starting to gather her things. Her mind was racing, trying to understand what was happening. "A secure location outside the city. The driver will have the address," Marcus said. His voice was tight with barely contained emotion. "Sarah, listen to me. Someone's life depends on your skill and your silence. This is what you've been trained for. This is why I chose you. Can you do this?" "Yes," Sarah said. She didn't even hesitate. "Yes, I can do this." "Then get ready. The car will be there in 8 minutes." The line went dead. Sarah stood there for a moment, holding the phone, her heart pounding in her chest. Then she sprang into action. She had medical scrubs in her apartment, high-quality, professional scrubs that Marcus had sent her months ago. She hadn't questioned why at the time. Now she understood. She grabbed her backpack and her phone and rushed out of the library. She ran to the nearest bus stop and caught the first bus heading toward her apartment. It took 15 minutes. Her hands were shaking the entire ride. When she got to her apartment, she changed into the white and navy blue scrubs as quickly as she could. She pressed her hair back into a neat bun. She made sure her hands were clean. She looked at herself in the mirror. She looked like a medical professional. She looked ready. She checked her phone. Exactly 8 minutes had passed since Marcus's call. She went downstairs to the street outside her apartment building. And there it was, the massive black GMC Yukon Denali, idling silently at the curb, its tinted windows obscuring whoever was inside. The driver was a different man this time. He was equally silent and imposing, his face shadowed by the glow of the dashboard lights. He didn't greet Sarah or make any acknowledgement of her presence. He simply waited for her to get into the back seat. Sarah climbed in, gripping the phone in her coat pocket. The fear was electric in her veins, but something else was there too. Something she hadn't expected. Professional focus. The part of her that had studied medicine, that had learned about treating patients, that had prepared for this moment, that part of her was ready. The drive was long and silent. They left the city behind, twisting through dark country roads until they pulled up to an enormous, isolated luxury estate. It was massive, the kind of home that belonged to someone incredibly wealthy. It was shielded by high walls and sophisticated security cameras. The property was clearly designed for privacy and protection. The Yukon pulled into a hidden underground garage, and Sarah was led through a series of immaculate marble-floored corridors until they reached a wing that was clearly dedicated to medical emergencies. It was a fully equipped medical suite, operating room, recovery room, equipment, everything a hospital would have, all nested within a structure designed for luxurious comfort. Marcus Sterling was there waiting for her. He was no longer wearing his elegant coat or his expensive suits. He was dressed in dark tactical clothing, black trousers and a simple, expensive, high-collared shirt. His face was pale. Worry lines creased his forehead. His eyes were intense with barely controlled panic. He looked, for the first time since Sarah had known him, vulnerable. He was standing over a medical gurney. On the gurney was an elderly man, impeccably dressed but unconscious. The man's breathing was shallow. His pulse was weak. A patch of his chest was soaked with dark, sluggish blood. His condition was critical. Dangerously critical. He was attacked, Marcus said, his voice low and ragged with urgency. There was a confrontation. A blade. A deep glancing cut to the sternum. It didn't nick the heart, but it's close. Very close. He's lost too much blood. I can't risk a hospital. He's my mentor. My father figure. The man who taught me everything I know about business, about power, about integrity. He's the most important person in my life. Sarah could hear the emotion in his voice. This wasn't just a patient. This was someone Marcus loved deeply. The emphasis on the man's importance was a clear projection of the stakes involved. Sarah took a deep breath. And then something shifted inside her. She was no longer a frightened young woman who had stumbled into a dangerous situation. She was a medical professional facing a patient in crisis. I need you to step back, she said, her voice steady and authoritative. I'm going to need space to assess him. She moved toward the gurney with confidence she didn't completely feel. She approached the unconscious man and immediately began her assessment. She checked his pulse at the carotid artery. It was weak and thready. She checked his pupils. They were slow to respond. She examined the wound. It was deep, jagged, and dangerously close to the vital organs in his chest. We need sterile water, she commanded, her voice taking on the tone of someone used to being obeyed in medical situations. We need sutures, a chest drain kit just in case, and 4 fluids immediately. And I need direct illumination on the wound. Where is your light source? Marcus, visibly relieved by her rapid shift into professional mode, simply pointed to a powerful adjustable overhead lamp mounted above the gurney. All equipment is prepared, he said. There is a trauma kit on the cart. Tell me what to do. I will assist. Sarah didn't pause to acknowledge him. She pulled on sterile gloves and began her assessment, carefully peeling back the blood-soaked fabric around the wound. The injury was horrific, deep, jagged, and dangerously close to the pericardium, the membrane surrounding the heart. One wrong move, and this man could die. She knew exactly what needed to be done. She needed to explore the wound carefully, clean and remove any damaged tissue, check for arterial damage, and then close the laceration with precise, layered stitching that would hold and not leave a scar that would remind this man of his trauma every time he looked in the mirror. She worked for over 2 hours. For the entire time, Marcus stood silently beside her, an intimidating presence, yet following her sparse, clipped instructions without question. When she asked for a tool, he handed it to her. When she needed the 4-bag adjusted, he did it. When she needed him to monitor the patient's breathing, he did that. The air was thick with the scent of blood, antiseptic, and concentrated fear. But Sarah was in her element. She focused solely on the task at hand. Her movements were precise and confident. She worked with the care of someone who understood that a human life depended on her skills. Her years of meticulous study, all those late nights reviewing anatomy textbooks, all those hours memorizing procedures, it all came together in this moment. The most powerful man in the room was reduced to her scrub-wearing assistant, following her orders without hesitation. As she finished the final neat row of silk sutures, as she taped a sterile pressure dressing over the wound, as she secured the 4-drip and set it to deliver fluids and antibiotics, Sarah felt a profound sense of purpose. She had done it. She had saved a life. She looked up at Marcus Sterling. He's stable, she announced, her voice slightly hoarse with fatigue. The bleeding is contained. He needs a transfusion, but we can't risk that here. The 4 fluids will stabilize his blood pressure for now. But the primary threat is infection. He needs continuous 4 antibiotics and monitoring for at least the next 48 hours. He must not be moved. Not tonight. Maybe not for several days. Marcus finally let out a long, slow breath. He closed his eyes for a brief moment as the tension visibly eased from his shoulders. When he opened his eyes and looked at his mentor, the elderly man lying unconscious on the gurney, his expression was complex. Relief mixed with gratitude mixed with deep concern. He turned to Sarah, and the look in his eyes was something she had never seen before. It was raw and intense and deeply, genuinely grateful. It went far beyond the formality of their business arrangement. This was a man who had just watched someone save the life of the person he loved most in the world. You are extraordinary, Sarah, he said softly, his voice a low, resonant murmur that filled the quiet medical room. You didn't hesitate. You were focused, professional, absolutely flawless. You saved him. You saved his life. He stepped closer to her. His imposing height made her look up to meet his eyes. And then, for the first time, he reached out and touched her. His gloved hand gently gripped her forearm, the pressure strong but respectful and warm. "Thank you," he said simply. The simple human contact after the intensity of the trauma felt like a profound and intimate acknowledgement. It sent a warm shiver through her exhausted body. It was the touch of a man relieved, a man whose carefully constructed world had nearly fractured, and she was the one who had held it together. It was the touch of someone expressing deep gratitude and deep respect. "The driver will take you to a secured guest suite upstairs," Marcus instructed, his tone a mix of command and gratitude. "You will not be going back to your apartment yet. You will check on him every 4 hours. I will ensure your schoolwork is handled. Do not leave the premises. Rest. Recover. But stay nearby." He released her arm, but his gaze held hers, direct and intense and so full of emotion. "And Sarah," he added, his voice dropping to that low, velvety register that carried hints of the power he wielded. "That man is my most crucial mentor. He's the man who shaped me into who I am. You have done more than fulfill a contract. You have cemented it. You have indebted me further, and I always repay my debts. Always." Sarah simply nodded, too overwhelmed to speak. She understood what he was saying. She had passed the ultimate test. By saving the life of this man, she had proven herself to be invaluable to Marcus Sterling. She had proven herself to be someone he could trust completely. And in doing so, she had bound herself to him in a way that went far beyond their original agreement. She had become essential to him. The guest suite was on the 3rd floor of the estate, a luxurious room that looked more like a 5-star hotel suite than anything Sarah had ever experienced. There was a beautiful bed with high-quality linens, a sitting area, a full bathroom with marble counters, and a large window that looked out over the grounds. Everything was tastefully decorated. Everything was perfect. Sarah collapsed onto the bed, still wearing her scrubs, too exhausted to even change clothes. She fell asleep almost immediately, a deep, dreamless sleep that came from complete physical and emotional exhaustion. She woke 4 hours later, as she had promised, and went back downstairs to check on Marcus's mentor. The elderly man was still unconscious but stable. His vital signs were holding. The 4 was dripping steadily. Sarah changed his dressing, checked his stitches, and made sure everything was exactly as it needed to be. Over the next 3 days, Sarah stayed at the estate. She checked on the elderly man every 4 hours. She monitored his vital signs. She changed his dressing. She made sure he was receiving the antibiotics he needed. She watched him slowly regain consciousness and begin the process of recovery. She was there every step of the way. And during those 3 days, something changed between Sarah and Marcus. He spent most of his time in the room with his mentor, but whenever Sarah came to check on the patient, Marcus would stay. He would watch her work. He would see the care she took, the precision of her movements, the gentleness of her touch. And his respect for her grew with each passing hour. On the 2nd day, as Sarah was finishing up a patient check, Marcus brought her tea and a meal on a tray. "You need to eat," he said simply. "You've been caring for him nonstop. You need to take care of yourself too." On the 3rd day, he asked her questions about the treatment. He wanted to understand what she had done, how she had known what to do, what her thought process had been. And Sarah, seeing his genuine interest, answered his questions. She explained medical concepts to him. She talked about anatomy and surgery and wound care. And as she talked, she saw the man who had seemed so intimidating and powerful beginning to seem more human, more real. "I studied for this," she said, explaining how she had prepared herself. "When you told me I might need to treat patients in crisis situations, I didn't just take the money and go to nursing school. I studied emergency medicine. I read surgical textbooks. I watched videos. I prepared myself because I knew that if you were calling on me, it would be because someone's life was on the line. I couldn't let you down." Marcus listened intently, and when she finished speaking, he was quiet for a long moment. "That's why I chose you," he said finally. "Not just because you returned the wallet. Not just because you showed integrity, but because of who you are as a person. You're someone who takes responsibility seriously. You're someone who prepares. You're someone who cares deeply about doing things right. Those are the qualities I need in someone I trust. Those are the qualities I value most." On the morning of the 4th day, the elderly man woke up. His eyes opened slowly, and he looked around the room with confusion. Marcus was there immediately, holding his hand, speaking to him softly in Korean. The old man smiled weakly at Marcus, and Sarah could see the deep love between them. When the man's eyes moved to Sarah, Marcus explained what had happened. He told his mentor about how Sarah had saved his life. He told him about her skills, her focus, her professionalism under pressure. The elderly man looked at Sarah with gratitude and respect, and he nodded slowly. "You have good taste in people," he said to Marcus, his voice weak but clear. "This young woman has a gift." That afternoon, Marcus told Sarah she could go back to her apartment. Her presence was still needed for monitoring, but the immediate crisis had passed. The elderly man would recover. He was going to be fine. The drive back to the city was quiet. Marcus was in the car with Sarah this time. He sat across from her in the spacious back seat of the Yukon, and they didn't speak much. But there was a different energy between them now. The fear had transformed into something else. Trust, maybe. Or respect. Or the beginning of something deeper that neither of them quite understood yet. When they arrived at her apartment building, Marcus walked her to the door. "You have a final exam in 2 days," he said. It wasn't a question. He knew her schedule. He knew everything about her life. "Yes," Sarah confirmed. "It's my biggest exam yet. It's what determines whether I can continue in the nursing program." "Then you will study," Marcus said. "And you will pass. Because you are brilliant, Sarah. You are capable of anything you set your mind to. And I need you to know that." He reached out and touched her cheek gently with the back of his hand. It was an unexpectedly tender gesture from a man she had thought was incapable of tenderness. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For everything. For saving him. For being the person you are. For trusting me, even though I know this hasn't been easy for you." Sarah found her voice. "Why did you do it?" she asked. "Why did you test me? Why did you choose me?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "Because I'm lonely," he said finally. His voice was soft, vulnerable in a way she had never heard. "I have money. I have power. I have influence. But I don't have people I can trust. I don't have people who know who I really am. People are always either afraid of me or trying to use me. But you saw past all of that. You saw a wallet on a table, and you did the right thing. No hesitation. No consideration of your own needs. And I knew in that moment that you were different." He paused, his hand still touching her cheek gently. "I wasn't testing you to control you," he continued. "I was testing you because I was hoping to find someone real. Someone genuine. Someone I could eventually call a friend. And Sarah, I think I found that in you." Sarah felt tears beginning to form in her eyes. She understood him suddenly. She understood the weight of his world. She understood how isolated he must feel, how hard it must be to never know if people were being honest with you or just pretending. "I'll always be honest with you," she said quietly. "Even when it's hard. Even when it might be easier not to be." Marcus smiled. It was a real smile, warm and genuine, so different from the cold, calculating expressions she had seen him wear before. "I know you will," he said. "That's why I trust you, Sarah. That's why you matter so much to me." Over the next several weeks, things shifted between them. Sarah passed her final exam with flying colors. She continued in the nursing program. She excelled in her classes. But now there was a different kind of support in her life. Marcus would call her, not with demands or emergencies, but just to talk, to see how she was doing, to ask about her classes, to make sure she was eating well and getting enough sleep. He sent her flowers after she did well on an exam. He took her to dinner at a fancy restaurant and told her about his childhood, about how his mentor had taught him everything. He shared stories about his business, about his dreams, about his fears. And Sarah shared her own stories. She told him about her grandmother. She told him about her childhood. She told him about her dreams of helping people. She told him about her fears of failing. A friendship was forming between them. A genuine, deep friendship that transcended their original arrangement. It was built on honesty and mutual respect and genuine care for each other's well-being. And underneath that friendship, there was something else beginning to grow. Something that neither of them quite dared to name yet. But it was there, in the way they looked at each other. In the way Marcus would touch her arm when they were together. In the way Sarah's heart would race when her phone rang and she heard his voice. It was the beginning of something more than friendship. It was the beginning of love. 1 year later, Sarah walked across the stage at her university graduation ceremony. She was wearing her nursing school cap and gown. She had her diploma in her hand. She was officially a registered nurse. All the years of hard work, all the sacrifices, all the late nights studying, It had all come together in this moment. She looked out into the audience, searching for one face in particular. And there he was, Marcus Sterling, sitting in the third row, dressed in an expensive suit, watching her with an expression of pure pride and joy on his face. When their eyes met, he smiled. And Sarah smiled back. She knew that none of this would have been possible without him. And she also knew that the life they had built together over the past year was built on something far deeper than gratitude or obligation. After the ceremony, Marcus was waiting for her outside the auditorium. He handed her a bouquet of white roses. "I'm so proud of you," he said simply. "You did this, Sarah. Through hard work and determination and brilliance, you made your dream come true." "We did this together," Sarah corrected him. "I couldn't have done it without you." "No," Marcus said firmly. "I paid for it. But you earned it. You showed up every single day. You studied. You learned. You passed your exams. You worked hard. That's all you, Sarah. All of that is you." That evening, Marcus took Sarah to a quiet restaurant overlooking the city. After they ate, he took her hand across the table. "I have something I want to ask you," he said, his voice serious but also nervous in a way she had rarely heard. "I know this might seem fast, and I know our relationship is complicated. We started in an unusual way. But over the past year, you've become the most important person in my life. You know me better than anyone has ever known me. You see me, really see me, and you still choose to be with me. So I have to ask." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. He opened it, and inside was a diamond ring, beautiful and elegant and clearly chosen with great care. "Sarah, will you marry me? Not because of any obligation or arrangement, but because I love you, because I want to spend my life with you, because I want to build a real life with you, a life based on love and honesty and mutual respect." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. She looked at the ring. She looked at the man sitting across from her, the man who had seemed so cold and intimidating when she first met him, but who had revealed himself to be kind and thoughtful and deeply loving. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, Marcus. Yes, I will marry you." He slipped the ring onto her finger and kissed her hand. And in that moment, Sarah realized that her life had come full circle. She had found a wallet. She had done the right thing. And in doing so, she had found not just financial security or career success, but she had found love. Real, genuine, deep, true love. 3 years later, Sarah and Marcus were sitting in their home. A beautiful house that they had chosen together, filled with warmth and laughter and love. Sarah was working as a nurse at a major hospital in the city, where she had built a reputation as a brilliant, compassionate caregiver. She was helping people every single day. She was saving lives. She was living her dream. Marcus was still a successful businessman, but his priorities had shifted. He spent more time with Sarah. He spent more time with his mentor, who had fully recovered from his injury and who had become close friends with Sarah as well. Marcus had started a foundation to help underprivileged students pursue their dreams in medicine and nursing. He was using his wealth and power to help others in a positive way. One evening, as they sat together on their back porch watching the sunset, Sarah said, "Do you remember that night when you called me? When your mentor was injured?" "I remember everything about that night," Marcus said, pulling her close. "It was the night I realized how much you meant to me. It was the night I understood that you weren't just someone I had hired or tested. You were someone I loved." "I was so scared," Sarah admitted. "I didn't know if I could do it. I didn't know if I would be good enough." "But you were more than good enough," Marcus said. "You were extraordinary. And you still are. Every single day, I'm amazed by your strength, your compassion, your brilliance. I'm so grateful that I found that wallet. I'm so grateful that I tested you that night. Because it led me to you." Sarah leaned her head on his shoulder. "I used to think that finding your wallet was my lucky break. But now I understand that it was so much more than that. It was the beginning of my real life. It was the moment when everything changed. It was the moment when I met you. And I'm grateful every single day," Marcus said, kissing the top of her head. "Grateful for your honesty. Grateful for your courage. Grateful for your love. You saved my life that night, Sarah. Not just the life of my mentor. You saved my life. You showed me that there are people in this world who are genuine, who are kind, who care about doing the right thing. You reminded me how to live." They sat together in silence as the sun set over the city, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and gold. Two people from completely different worlds who had found each other by chance, and who had built something beautiful together. A relationship based on honesty and trust and genuine love. A partnership that had started in an unconventional way, but had become something real and true and lasting. Sarah thought back to that night at Murphy's Cafe, when she had found the wallet and made the choice to return it. She thought about her grandmother's words. There is no peace in stolen comfort. You sleep soundly on your own dime. Her grandmother had been right. But she had also been wrong about one thing. Sometimes, when you do the right thing, when you stay true to your principles and your values, the universe rewards you in ways you never could have imagined. Sometimes, when you choose integrity, you find not just peace, but joy. Not just comfort, but love. Sarah Mitchell had started as a waitress working minimum wage shifts at a small diner. But through her hard work, her determination, her integrity, and her willingness to help others, she had become a nurse, a wife, a partner to a man who loved her deeply, and a woman living the life she had always dreamed of. And it had all started with a simple choice. The choice to do the right thing, even when it would have been so easy to do otherwise. That's the thing about integrity, you see. It's not always the easiest path. It's not always the quickest path to success. But it's the path that leads to real peace. Real joy. Real love. Real life. Sarah looked up at Marcus, and he was looking down at her with such tenderness, such love in his eyes. And she knew that no matter how their relationship had started, no matter how unconventional their beginning had been, what they had built together was real. It was true. It was beautiful. Sometimes the most precious things in life come to us in unexpected ways. Sometimes all it takes is one moment of choosing to do the right thing, and your entire world can change. Sometimes, when you're brave enough to be honest and kind and true, you find not just success, but you find home. And that, my friends, is the real story. Not just about the wallet or the money or the business arrangement, but about two people finding each other, and in finding each other, finding themselves. Thank you for letting me share Sarah and Marcus's story with you tonight. I hope it reminds you that doing the right thing matters, that your integrity matters, that you matter, and that sometimes, when you least expect it, life surprises you with something more beautiful than you ever could have imagined. Good night, everyone. And remember, always choose integrity. Always do the right thing. Because you never know what beautiful things might come from that choice. The end.